philosopher, psychiatrist, and Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl lays out a case for what he calls a tragic optimism, a way to say yes to life in spite of the inevitable suffering that comes with living. This is the beating heart at the core of Trigun Maximum. Let us first ask ourselves what should be understood by a tragic optimism. In brief, it means that one is and remains optimistic in spite of pain, guilt, and death. How is it possible to say yes to life in spite of all of that? How, to pose the question differently, can life retain its potential meaning in spite of its tragic aspects? After all, saying yes to life in spite of everything presupposes that life is potentially meaningful under any conditions, even those which are most miserable. There are three main avenues on which one arrives at meaning in life. The first is by creating a work or by doing a deed. The second is by experiencing something or encountering someone. In other words, meaning can be found not only in work, but also in love. Most important, however, is the third avenue to meaning in life. Even the helpless victim of a hopeless situation, facing a fate he cannot change, may rise above himself, may grow beyond himself, and by so doing, change himself. He may turn a personal tragedy into a triumph. Man is not fully conditioned and determined, but rather determines himself whether he gives in to conditions or stands up to them. In other words, man is ultimately self-determining. Man does not simply exist, but always decides what his existence will be, what he will become in the next moment. By the same token, every human being has the freedom to change at any instant. Your ticket to the future is always blank. Once in a duel to protect a farm, Vash shot the pistol right out of an outlaw's hand. The old man couldn't believe that he'd been outgunned, let alone by this silly, pretty young man. He says, "I've been living off this gun longer than you've been alive, you punk." Vash says, I don't think so. This snapshot of Vash's life could have happened 100 years ago, and it could have happened last week. It's just how he lives, how he's lived for 150 years. An enigma and a paradox, a plant in the form of a man, a savior with the reputation of a devil, a pacifist, living by his gun. It's his way of navigating this brutal world, bridging the gap between the way the world is without losing sight of the way the world could be. If you shoot someone, he says, they die. But if you don't arm yourself, you can't defend yourself. I will never kill anyone. And I'm willing to do whatever it takes so that it doesn't happen. I did what I could. I did everything I could. That is how I lived my life. That is how I lived my life. He is sick from Wolfwood's death, exhausted from his fight with knives, disgusted by Legato and his game, spooling out the last reserves of his plant power in an uncontrolled last run. Pieces of Chronica's flagship thunder to the planet below. Legato lunges for Vash through the wreckage, almost gets his eye taken out by one of Vash's needle-like feathers. He's sticking close enough to Vash that he's protected from the wreckage by the defenses that Vash's dying body is putting out. And he maneuvers between feathers and ship fragments until he's right at Vash's back. And he says, "Gotcha." Though her ship is falling apart, Chronica manages to guide it in a semi-controlled crash into the desert outside the city. Earth Command watches her go down, and Knives laughs at her. Legato has his wires back in Vash. So much for his promise that he'd never touch him again. But Vash rejected the game when he destroyed the box, so Legato's not holding to the rules anymore either. Vash struggles against Legato's control. Legato tells him, 8 months of this, and you should have learned your lesson. You can't escape me. But he's not dealing with the Vash of 8 months ago. There's unchecked power radiating off of him. And I think Legato can sense that. He starts glancing around wildly, and puts the barrel of his gun to the back of Vash's neck. And he meets Vash's lethal, haunting side eye. The serrated parts of his gun snap forward like a butterfly knife. It should have taken off Vash's head, but he ducks out of the way with inhuman precision. His bladed wings slash at Legato while he turns around and aims his gun at Legato's head. Legato knocks the gun away with his own gun, like a sword parry, and he realizes, I cannot hold him. With these wings, my power is not enough to contain him. And Legato must be out of ammo because he continues fighting with his bayonet. Vash is silent and grim as ever. He does not speak, and aside from the brief memory at the beginning of the volume, we are not granted insight into his mind during this fight. But Legato thinks he understands where Vash is at. He believes Vash doesn't even realize it himself, but he is certain that at this point, Vash the Stampede has taken the shackles of his pacifist reputation and cast them aside. If we are to believe Legato's assessment, Vash is now fighting to kill. Legato's butterfly blades scissor into Vash's prosthetic, biting deep and ripping it apart. Somebody is screaming. It could be Legato, it could be Vash, it could be both of them. Legato has a flash of memory of knives and a young Elendera walking the wastelands with him. Legato's life is flashing before his eyes. Vash slams into Legato, a wing cutting him from shoulder to armpit, and Legato falls, blood sheeting out of him. He falls flat onto his back, looking down the barrel of Vash's revolver. Vash, black as night and hollow-eyed as a ghost, and Legato realizes, I have lost. I don't even remember how I fought or how I died. It all happened so fast. His eyes are fading, and he thinks, this is good. This is right. And then the cold press of steel leaves his forehead. He opens his eyes to see Vash pulling his gun away. Vash is letting him live. Legato screams in misery and hysteria, are you kidding me? Shoot me. Just shoot me, you bastard. He grabs the gun and forces it back to his face, offended by Vash's mercy, throwing a tantrum. Shoot me. You're mocking my life. This is bullshit. Shoot me. Vash gives him nothing. He just looks the same as he always has this fight. Angry, disgusted, worn out. Legato's straining to put his brain right in the path of a bullet, gripping Vash's gun, like if he squeezes it hard enough, a bullet might just pop out and end him. He says, okay, fine. We'll do this my way. But just remember, this is all your fault. Vash goes wide-eyed. It's the first time his grim emotional armor has cracked. Legato hauls up Livio and Elendera's corpse from the ground. They're still spiked to each other like some grotesque, half-dead spider. Vash says, stop. Don't move. Stop this. And Legato uses Elendera's body to start pulling at Livio's head, separating it from his body where the nail is still protruding from between his collarbones. Vash begs, rage and fury, please. Please. Legato says, you're childish and arrogant, and your beliefs are a pile of shit. Vash's finger is on the trigger. Livio's eyes plead as he chokes on his own blood. Make your choice and break, you dreaming saint. Vash screams. There's a double-page spread of Wolfwood smiling. If you shoot someone, they die. Livio fights to stay conscious. Razlo's telling him, if you black out now, you're never going to wake up. He watches it happen. Clean shot, straight to the head. As clean as 400 foot-pounds of energy at 1,000 feet per second, straight to the brain can be. Legato's life ends with a spray of blood and brain and bone fragments. It was not clean. Death never is. But it was mercifully quick, which is more than he deserves. I don't know if Vash closes his eyes, but he doesn't turn away. If he's going to do this, he gives Legato the dignity of acknowledging his death, his role in his death. Vash drops to his knees. Livio shucks Elendera's body off of him, screaming for Vash, crawling to his side. Vash is going into shock. I don't think he's able to register what's going on around him at all. This decision will haunt him just as much as Rem's death, just as much as Wolfwood's death, as July, as the fall, as Fifth Moon. He's hyperventilating, unmoving, staring at the gory remains of Legato's head, hearing Wolfwood's voice telling him, it will come for you someday and you will have to choose. And he just starts to weep. And he answers Wolfwood. He says, I couldn't do it. You gave up your life for him, and I couldn't bear to let your life and death go to waste. And I think he might have sat there and died in the falling wreckage had Livio not picked him up and carried him bodily out of there. He's just gone completely unresponsive. Conscious, but just a rag doll on Livio's shoulders. His face is a mess of tears. He had called Wolfwood a coward for shooting Ride. And now he's thinking, is this what it felt like for you too? Every time? How could I have been so cruel? He just cries and cries. It was all for Wolfwood. This final, ultimate act of love. I don't like it when stories end with the pacifist character killing someone. And I don't like it because it's usually framed as if a naive pacifist needs to learn that killing is okay because this is the real world and you need to grow up. And that's evil. But I think this is not that. What just happened is not that. Trigun is saying that if you must kill, it should break you. Even if it's someone you hate. Even if it's to save someone you love. Even if it was the right choice. A life is a life. You cannot unpull that trigger. This scene is not saying that it's okay to compromise your convictions if the situation really calls for it. It is saying, if you must kill, it should break you. Even if it's the most awful man in the world. Even if he deserves it. Even if he wants it. Because every man has the capacity for change up until the moment of his death. Luida in Stampede said, I don't want to justify wrongdoing just to survive, and that is one of the most important themes of this whole entire story. Vash did everything he could. He keeps showing Legato mercy until the bitter end, but you can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. It's like a doctor offering a sick man the life-saving cure to his illness, saying you can take it and live, but the patient rejects the medicine. The offer is there, extended 100 times, but the patient can't be forced to take the medicine. There is, in the Bible, an unforgivable sin mentioned, and most agree that the only unforgivable sin is to reject the love and kindness of God. God is standing there with his arms wide open, saying, I will forgive everything you have ever done. You can have a new beginning with me, but you have to accept the invitation. Legato would choose to send himself to hell, rather than accept that change is possible even for him. That even for him, there could be a blank ticket. We've seen things like this before. Both Dominique and Leonov chose death over Vash's mercy, over their potential blank ticket. But unlike Legato, they both made their own choices to die, and they fell to their deaths. It was a death on their own terms. They did not force his hand. I think to force someone to go against their deeply held beliefs is one of the most evil things you can do. And I think the very fact that it was so forced, a trolley problem uniquely designed to torment Vash, tells us that Legato is wrong. This is wrong. This is so wrong. The world is not so cruel naturally. You made it so. Legato is so mired in his suffering that Vash's mercy drives him mad. I think if this were any other story, if these were any other characters, like, who cares? Who would mourn that an evil man is dead and a good man killed him to save someone else's life? I actually lost my appetite for a few days after reading this. Like, I was remembering when I said in the Volume 11 video that I foresaw that everything post Volume 10 hinges on Livio. I didn't know how horribly right I would be. I suppose, in a way, though, I could see this coming. I sort of knew, or at least suspected, that it happened in Trigun 1998, but I wasn't sure if that carried over to the manga. But even without that hint or spoiler, it makes sense, right? Vash has been pushed to his limits, and he has failed in nearly every way, except this one. I'll elaborate on that later, but like, if this is the one place where he hasn't failed, we need to see him fail here too, in his convictions, in his pacifism, where it matters most, to see what he's made of. If Wolfwood, who would do whatever it takes to stay alive, had to face death, his greatest fear, and see it all the way through to the end, to see what he's made of, then it's only fair that Vash, who would do everything it took not to kill, has to face his greatest trial, killing a man. Choosing to kill a man. He has to see that through to the end and still come out the other side. I think this is a direct mirror to Trimax Volume 1, when Vash went into that hostage situation and took a beating to make sure that everyone got out alive. I think that back then the story wasn't asking us to make a moral judgment on the situation, and I honestly don't really think it's doing that now. I think it's forcing you to look at something uncomfortable and ask very big questions of the text. Like, I just don't think the story wants us to look at this with a black and white lens. On the one hand, Vash was right to kill Legato in that there was no better option. And on the other hand, he was wrong to do so, in that it betrays everything that he stood for. And that's not a contradiction. It's both things at once, both a sin and a necessary act, an act of love and an absolute betrayal. And I think Trigun is asking you to make peace in the tension. So much of the human experience will never just be one thing or the other. Was it necessary? Yes. Was it wrong for Vash specifically? Also yes. Would it have been better to let Livio die? Absolutely not. Would it have been kind of a non-issue for anyone else? Absolutely. But if someone firmly believes it would be a sin for them to do a thing that is perfectly legitimate for other people to do from a natural law perspective, who am I to say they're wrong? And I think if the takeaway you get from this scene is that it's proving Vash's philosophy, proving Vash's worldview or pacifism wrong, you're not paying attention. A broken conviction does not mean the whole concept is moot. Not when the story is proving Vash's way of life correct in every other facet. Like, I want you to banish the thought from your mind that this is just Vash deciding that killing is okay. This was a desperate action done by a desperate man in a desperate place. He violates his convictions, and yet his convictions do not change. Whatever effort we make, whatever change our actions create, will always fall short of our ideals. But that is the entire point of an impossible ideal. Because the alternative is just acquiescence. Acquiescence to the way the world is, acquiescence to the status quo. How is Vash supposed to change anything if he were to just go around killing, just like everyone else on the planet? A worthwhile life strives for the impossible. It is a futile goal, but it is not a futile effort. Trigun says you are going to fail. You are human. It is inevitable. You have the capacity to commit any sin, to break even your most deeply held convictions. It may happen. It will happen. What are you going to do when it does? We've seen Vash lose his family, lose battles, lose his dignity, lose his autonomy, but all of those are impressed upon by external factors, caused by other means. What happens when it's you? When you lose yourself, do you give it all up? Do you let the shame break you? Or do you acknowledge what you did and get back on your feet? It's so crazy how a tragedy can feel uplifting when it's just a story about a man who fails over and over and over again. Am I talking about Hadestown or Trigun? Yes. Hadestown composer Anais Mitchell had this to say about her story. If Hadestown has a moral, then it's you have to try. You have to have hope, not because success is a given. It's not. Orpheus fails. We heroicize Orpheus not because he succeeds, but because he tries. And that endeavor alone is worthwhile. How to live and not merely survive is to believe things could change. Vash is no stranger to failure. In fact, I'm struggling to think of a time where he hasn't failed. He fails to save Wolfwood. Time and again, he fails to master his own powers. He fails to stop knives. He fails so much and in really significant ways. But the one realm he hasn't failed yet is in his own moral code. And so the story is pushing him to this point and saying, okay, what do you do when you break your own rules? You've committed your cardinal sin. Do you just throw out the entire framework because you failed to follow it one time? Do you give in to despair? Do you just lay yourself down in a grave that you dug for yourself? May it never be. You do what you have always done in the face of failure. You get back up and you keep trying. You don't blame the situation. You take responsibility. It's so beautiful to me that Vash does not compromise on this. He does not justify this situation to himself and say, it was okay for me to do this because I had to. He doesn't say I had no other choice, so it's fine for me to kill him. What he says is, I couldn't do it. He's saying this was wrong for me, but I still chose to do it because the alternative would have also been wrong. I made my choice and I have to live with it. He made that choice, like Wolfwood said he would. And maybe if he had only had more time, or he had better control of his powers, or Levio wasn't there, any number of factors, it could have gone a million other ways, but he made that decision, and he owns up to it. See, Vash doesn't kill, not because he thinks people don't deserve to die, or he thinks that killing will make him evil, or any of those common fictional pacifist reasons. It's, I think, a lot of things, and all of them are so much bigger than that. He doesn't kill because Rem died to save everyone here. And to kill someone that she died for would betray her sacrifice. He doesn't kill because he sees all of humanity as his brothers and sisters. He doesn't kill because he is already a murderer, an unwilling weapon in the hands of knives, and he has no right to pull that trigger and make that call on someone else's life. Remove the specific people from this situation here. He is weighing the life of one murder machine against the life of another. And he himself has been a murder machine. And he is not authorized to make that judgment call. His anguish over this decision, I think, contrasts so heavily with what we see in the next couple of chapters, the orders that come down from Earth, where people very far removed from a situation impassively look at some numbers and decide whose lives are worth sacrificing for the sake of some nebulous greater good. It's so easy to pull that trigger when you don't see the personhood of the people around you. But I think ultimately Vash does not kill because he believes, difficult though it is to hold to this belief, he believes that everyone is worth saving, that everyone can be saved. Everyone has that potential. And who is he to rob them of that chance, of that choice that they could make? It's radical and maybe even ridiculous, but it is needed. I think when considering how to live, you have to consider what produces the most beauty in this world. Not always what narrative you can prove most logically or analytically, but what is the most beautiful and compelling way to live. Viktor Frankl, at the end of Man's Search for Meaning, speaks of the necessity of these kinds of saints. Those people who live in such an honorable and almost superhuman way, the ones whose spirits could not be broken even while enduring the worst suffering mankind could concoct. The ones who went to gas chambers with the Lord's Prayer and the Shema Yisrael on their lips. You may be prone to blame me for invoking examples that are the exceptions to the rule. You may, of course, ask whether we really need to refer to saints. Wouldn't it suffice to just refer to decent people? There's a whole lot more of those. It is true that saints form a minority. More than that, they will always remain a minority. And yet I see therein the very challenge to join the minority. For the world is in a bad state, but everything will become still worse unless each of us does his best. Vash's hardline pacifism is strategic and necessary for the sake of the world, even when he breaks his rule. When he does break this rule, is there any better reason than love? For such a strange love, a second-hand love for Livio. Love that is more of a grief than anything else, because it is love for a man who died for love. I think that what has happened here between Vash and Livio may not understand the full weight of watching Vash kill another man for him, because he hasn't known Vash for long, but he is still so affected by it. I can't imagine the difficulty of navigating the relationship between the two of them. I think Vash must feel so weird. Put yourself in Vash's position for a minute. Every time you look at him, you relive the worst moments of your life. Every time you look at him, you see the ghost of his dead brother whom you loved. Sometimes you wish it had been Livio instead of him. And you wish you didn't wish that. Livio didn't kill Wolfwood, but sometimes it feels like he did. And you forgive him and try not to resent him because you owe it to him. You owe it to his brother. But every time you look at him, you remember the sickening ricochet, an impossible decision, and you see brain matter like bloody grubs splattered on the ground. You feel the skull fragments crunch under your boots. You did this. You chose this because of him, for him. You broke every promise for him. You wish you loved him. You don't know how. It's impossible to blame him. It's impossible not to blame him. And he's devoted to you and even loves you. Not the way his brother did, but he's kind. He'd do anything you asked. But maybe it's not love. Maybe it's just a debt. Because he owes the guilt of his existence to you. Twice over. To you and his brother. He must feel like a dog. You could hurt him badly. You could be so cruel, but you forgive him. You try. And you trust him. You can never leave him because you chose him again and again. He was there to carry you at your lowest, and you've carried him too. Put him to bed like a little child, fed him and slept near him, and refused to let him despair. And every time you look at him, he has the same hair as your brother. And you miss your brother. The half of you who couldn't be saved, who's never coming back to you, who you loved until the bitter end, and who loved you too. You're each half a pair now, little brothers, alone in the world. But you loved his brother, and you loved your brother. So you love him too. And even when you don't, even if you can't, you find a way to love him still. The 3 scout ships that came down from the Earth fleet are attempting to interface with the plants of the Ark directly. They're cloaked, hovering above Octoberon. They launch a cable, and it successfully connects to the Ark. And oddly enough, Knives does not seem to notice. He's looking up at something else. And that's when the scout ships see the 7 remaining ships of the Earth fleet are descending down in formation, entering the atmosphere to go scorched earth on the Ark. Millie and Meryl, when they hear this from the Earth folks. They protest. That can't be right. That's going to kill so many people. And the Earth crew has to explain, yeah. This means that Earth headquarters decided that the death of No Man's Land is the price to be paid for the rest of humanity's survival. Kronika's down, and if Knives acquires more plants, he will only get stronger. So someone on the distant Earth weighed the cost and decided the risk was too great. Human casualties be damned. Meryl's response is the only proper response. That's ridiculous. And then Millie looks out the window to the ground and starts freaking out because she sees Vash. Livio has dragged what's left of him and Vash out of the wreckage, and Meryl disembarks the ship to find Vash unconscious and Livio in an absolute state. He'd held it together long enough to get them both to safety, but now that they're in the clear, Livio is breaking down, and he can barely get the words out when he tells Meryl that this man killed a man to protect me. He's crying, Meryl's crying. Vash's finger is on the trigger of his gun in a death grip. He is so out of his mind that he can't even keep proper trigger safety. Meryl cradles Vash's head, and she thinks of how just moments ago they were talking about sacrificing tens of thousands of people, and how easy it would have been for someone light years away to make that decision when they're not the ones dying, and they're not even the ones doing the killing. Vash wakes halfway, like someone still asleep coming out of a nightmare, screaming and lifting his gun, and Meryl grabs his hand and pries his fingers off the gun so he won't hurt anyone. She tells him, "You can let go. It's okay. You don't have to keep carrying everything on your own. We're here. We're fighting with you. Please don't ever forget that." 150 years of living by his gun, protecting life and never taking it, showing up again and again for love and for peace in the face of unbearable grief. Goodness enough to be reckoned with, loving and losing and loving again. All of this, but Vash has only ever been human. Like every human, it is not good for him to be alone. He has put in the work, the difficult work of loving and building relationships despite his avoidant personality. And so when he falls, Livio is there to pick him up, and Meryl is there to remind him who he is. None of them blame him for what he did. None of them celebrate it either. They simply understand how tremendous of a thing that it was for him, how painful and wrong it must feel. And they understand just how much he needs them right now, so that he does not have to suffer this alone. The 7 ships from Earth converge around the Ark. Meryl asks the man in charge of the scout mission if, since he is willing to sacrifice the lives of the people on this planet, if he'd be willing to risk his own life for the chance to save them. And he says, of course. Word comes down from the scout ships to the few on the ground, telling them that transmissions are go, and they're sending over everything they can to the plants. Data, images, audio, whatever they can get their hands on to bridge this 150-year gap. The transmission rocks Knives to his core. He's disconnected himself from the main body of the Ark, but he still feels it. And from on high, a single feather floats down into the city, right in front of a man who plucks it from the air. The next chapter is interspersed with flashbacks to the immediate aftermath of humanity after the Big Fall. It took me 2 years and 16 volumes of Trigun to connect the Big Fall to the fall of man in the Bible, when Adam and Eve ate the fruit and doomed all of humanity to a life of toil and death and separation from God. In Trigun's fall, maybe Knives is the serpent who deceived humanity and brought ruin upon them. Or maybe he's Eve who took the first bite. After the crash, the planet is just littered with wrecked ships and shattered plant bulbs and fires and dead and dying people. The survivors band together, but without resources, they will die quickly in the desert heat. Desperate crowds gather around one single plant. and one young man is able to get her to produce some water. They're going to continue to live. In the months after the fall, civilization begins to crop up around this plant and her water. People fight and kill for the resources she provides. A fence is constructed and armed guards posted around this wellspring of life, and some order begins to return to the world. 2 more plants are found alive. With their provision, a city begins. The 7 ships of the Earth fleet land a direct hit on Knives, but it has no effect. He can just take and deflect whatever they send at him, but they don't really seem to have any other course of action. Meryl and Millie take Vash with them back up into their scout ship, but Livio stays behind. The 3 scout ships are wired to each other, maintaining altitude to keep up their broadcast, and Meryl on the ship sees particles falling like snow from the arc, crystalline feather-like pieces falling down from the plants above, landing on the population below. There's one little girl who's lost and separated from her mother, and when a feather falls on her face, 2 nearby men see her and understand her plight and reunite her with her mother immediately. The men, for a moment, could feel her thoughts. The need to find Mom appeared in their heads, and they knew where to find her and where to go. And they weren't the only ones. Knives feels something jarring. A jolt that takes his attention away from the ships in the sky. He's kept himself separated from the rest of the Ark to prevent being completely overridden by his sisters, because it nearly happened once or twice before he cut himself off from them. And so the scout ships from Earth think that maybe they'll have the advantage over Knives in terms of having an in to the plant's consciousness, because they're connected directly by cable, and Knives is not physically connected to them at all. Meryl still thinks this isn't really going to work. They've barely made any progress, and maybe the plants are resistant to their attempts to communicate because they've been exploited and neglected by humans in the past. It's not going to be easy to bridge that gap. The ships surrounding Knives keep up a continuous barrage of defensive cannon fire. It's not hurting Knives, but it keeps his attention on them because he can't really focus on anything else while he's being attacked so relentlessly. As civilization was built on this planet, battles were fought for the plants. Churches sprung up around them. The Christianity of No Man's Land becomes infused with plant worship. These angels, these gifts of God, like all of God's gifts, humanity misuses these angels. Plants are used up and die. But it's not all exploitation and strife. Humanity also cares for plants. Technicians keep them fed and happy. Kids take little field trips to see the beautiful ladies who make their food. Cleaning crews keep their bulbs polished. People bow in gratitude when they meet them. Green growing things begin to sprout from the ground under the careful eye of a geoplant. And there's a panel of someone throwing away leftover food. What a miracle. Enough food that it can afford to be wasted. Enough infrastructure to form a metropolis. Enough order to keep plants safe and housed. Enough people to build these things. Enough life to be lived. The Earth ship loads up Tallhammer. The captain makes a brief but grand speech to Knives about order and balance. He says the world is built on a fine balance of energy, and Knives, using his power in this way, has disrupted the natural flow of the world and reignited conflict. He says it's something Knives is too ignorant to understand, and that by playing God, he has corrupted the natural flow of life. If Tallhammer is fired at Knives, it will obliterate the surface of the planet. October doesn't stand a chance. Earth is killing their own people here too, because the probe ships are still down there. The captain orders them to leave the airspace immediately, because they're not going to hold fire just for the sake of a handful of people down there. And the scout ships ask for just a little more time, but the captain is unrelenting. Millie, Meryl, Brad, Luita, and the Earth team refuse to give up. They're going to try to crack the Ark's defenses and communicate with the plants and negotiate for peace until the bitter end. Vash opens his eyes to complete nothingness. He's laying, or almost floating, in a pitch-black expanse. There's nothing in the void except for a faint shine, almost like light on the water, in the distance. Then Vash scrambles awake, screaming, because out of nowhere, Legato is standing in front of him, lifeless, blood all over his face. Vash just screams and screams from some visceral place inside him. His body had shut down to protect him from the anguish of what he'd done. But his restless nightmares won't let him forget the sight of the man he executed. What calms him is the sight of a man in black standing behind Legato. And when Wolfwood lifts his face to Vash, he's smiling at him. Vash says his name, Wolfwood. And behind Wolfwood, more people start to appear. There's Sensei and Emilio, and Vash looks around at this great cloud of witnesses gathered around him. He's on his knees before them, smoke from Wolfwood's cigarette blowing in his face. There's Ride and people from home, and the woman who employed him in that kitchen in July. So many people showing up here for him. Most of them are smiling, but all the life leaves Vash's eyes when it hits him that everyone here is dead. And everyone here is dead, one way or another, because of him. All the way in the back of the crowd, standing behind everyone. He sees his mom. Rem, just as she was in life, long dark hair, jeans and a t-shirt, and her kind face, looking right at him despite the distance. He breaks into a run, arm outstretched, calling her name, but he can't reach her. There's an invisible wall hemming him in. He sinks to his knees and pounds it with his fist. He's crying again. But after a moment of despair, he turns around to face back the way he came. It's not his time yet, no matter how badly he wants to pass on. He's not allowed to do it yet. It's chaos in the land of the living, but something's changed. There's a small crack in the outer shell that holds the plants of the Ark together. They're listening. The 7 ships put their engines at full power. They're not going to spare this planet just for the sake of 3 little scout ships. As Tallhammer powers up, Meryl tells Millie she's sorry, and Millie tells her, don't say things like that. The Earth Captain himself admits that he is committing a great sin, but if he has to wipe out the planet's population to end knives, well then he's going to do it because it's for the greater good of humanity. What an irony it would be for the people of No Man's Land to fight and struggle to survive and eke out an existence, only to be wiped out by the arrogance of Earth, who came here to save them. Again, I'm reminded of what Louitas said in Stampede. I don't want to justify wrongdoing just to survive. Meryl's right. It is ridiculous to destroy the remnant of humanity on this planet who asked for your help to come here to save them. They were supposed to rescue these people. It's not right. Who even gets to decide who is worthy to make that call? It's easy to make that call when you're distant and impassive on another planet light years away. But every person on this planet is a living, breathing being with a family, with likes and dislikes, someone who eats and laughs and sleeps and cries and poops, just like everyone else. You would not be so eager to make this call if you lived on the planet. You would not be so eager to make this call if you saw each human for what they really are. Your brother and your sister. The 7 ships around the Ark fire all at once, but it's all for nothing, because Knives, of course, was ready. He simultaneously opens 7 gates right at each of the ship's gun ports, and the warheads pass through the wormholes. Knives takes them in and redirects them back at each ship in a precise 7-pointed star that's visible from space. I can't even describe to you how crazy this looks on the page. You just have to see it for yourself. What Knives did was so risky and precise that the captain equates it to pouring an avalanche through a straw. All 7 ships managed to survive because their shields were up, but they are barely functional. They start crashing down to the desert, and the people watching from the city are just gobsmacked. They've seen so much already, and yet things just keep coming. Knives' mutilated body and the swollen Ark are the only things left in the sky, and that's when people start to panic. This was supposed to be their salvation. Vance, the man in charge of the scout ships, admits defeat. he says it's over. There is nothing else we can do. Absolutely anything could happen now. But Meryl and Millie get right back to their posts, attempting to communicate with the plants like nothing ever happened. And Meryl says, "You're right. On this planet, anything can happen. Our ancestors came to this planet with a dream of paradise and found only sand, but we've lived." And Millie adds that they face the impossible every day here. It's how they live. They don't know how to give up. And they've survived this, so they should start planning for what comes next. Vansa asks, "What has made these women so strong?" And Meryl simply says, "It's because we stand together with Vash. He's fighting to end this, and we have to do what we can too." This is not Meryl saying she's only strong because of Vash. She has plenty of inner strength on her own, but she is saying that Vash lives in a way that is so insane and foreign to the people in this world. He has a child's faith and a fool's hope, and Meryl learned that resilient hope from him. And so did Millie, and so did Wolfwood, and Brad, and Luita, and Livio, and everyone whose life has been changed by the love of Vash the Stampede. That's what radical sacrificial love does. It radiates out and infects everyone who experiences it. And once you've tasted it, you can't go back. If Vash is Jesus in our allegory, Millie and Meryl are like the women disciples mentioned in the Bible, like Mary Magdalene and Salome and Mother Mary and Joanna. These women were not counted among the 12 apostles, but they were more faithful to Jesus than anyone else. They didn't leave his side, even during the crucifixion, when everyone else had abandoned him. And they were there to see him after the resurrection. They were the first to tell the world that he had come back. Mary Magdalene was the first evangelist. And I think that's Meryl's role in this story as well. Vash has changed her life, and she needs the whole world to know. Vash is alone in that darkness that lies between life and death. The crowd is still there, but they're distant and unresponsive. They just watch. The invisible wall keeps him from reaching Rem. He's blocked from moving on, but he thinks, if I go back, what is left for me? Where can I go? Just then, starbursts of light appear around him, and with them, Meryl's words cut through the void. We stand with Vash. We fight with him. And after 2 chapters, comatose, sleeping like the dead, Vash wakes up, opens his eyes wide to see a feather on his face. But it's not his feather. He's in a ship, strangers in spacesuits all around him. And there's a voice in his head, whether it's his own or Rem's or his sister's or Wolfwood, I don't know, but I think it's his sisters. They're telling him, "Come on, Vash the Stampede. This is no time to be sleeping. Get up. Once more. One last time." Says, "I can't." What a cruel joke this life has turned out to be. What gets him up is not his own willpower, nor the memory of his loved ones, nor Meryl's presence. It's Knives, his connection to Knives. He sees, or rather feels, or just knows that Knives has brought the ships down and is going mad with power, roaring like an animal. And Vash lunges awake, sitting up with tears in his eyes and his fist to the sky. There's one last thing he has to do. He entered into this world with his brother, and he will not leave without him. Knives has won. He has accomplished everything he set out to do. He's reclaimed his sisters, vanquished the Earth fleet, and he'll draw in the remaining plants from October and leave the planet. He won't even bother to kill the rest of the humans because they'll simply dry up once he leaves with the plants. But there's this noise in his head. He covers his face with his hand. It's something he does often enough that I've noticed. I think the first time he did this was when he was a child, and when he bit his thumb and smeared the blood all over his face in a promise to avenge and protect his sisters. But he covers his face to focus in on his sisters, and he asks them, "What's wrong? Are you in pain? What is this feeling of regret, sorrow, distress?" It reads like he can't quite decipher what it is they're feeling. He tells them, "I thought we were united in our hatred of humans. I thought we were united in our search for a new tomorrow, but there's this noise, there's this fear. What is it?" And then he feels it. It's Vash. Of course it's Vash. Knives cannot allow him to keep running interference like this, and he decides if I have to spill his blood to stop him, then I will do what I must. Vash is going to plug himself straight into the Ark. Bansu says it's insane, because Vash should be jumping straight into the open field of consciousness to bypass language and psychological responses to just get to the heart of his sisters. And he's right, that is insane. Vash just looks so tired and worn, I don't even think he cares about the risk. This is what they have left, so this is what he will do. He's standing at the top of one of the little ships with a pronged cable in his hand, alone once more. And then the Ark starts to descend. Vash goes to jam the spikes of the cord straight into his neck, and it's going to hurt, so he braces and hesitates for just a second, and that's when the Ark flies over and the shock wave of its passing knocks him down and knocks the cable from his hand. He lands on his butt, scrambles for the cord. Knives lays eyes on him and sees what he intends to do, and screams at Vash, "Stop! Don't touch me!" He says, "Me, not us." And Vash just goes for it. The connection is this crazy electric shock. Vash's face starts fracturing. Lightning zaps out of his eyes. Knives is screaming, the plants are screaming, Vash is screaming. Knives grits his teeth against the breach of consciousness, but the damage has been done. Huge pieces of the Ark begin sloughing off and raining down alongside all the masses of feathers that were falling. Vash collapses. Knives is straight up unraveling. Vash watches the snowfall of feathers descend around him in near delirium. He wills this connection to work. He believes in his sisters. He believes in their ability to understand and make a decision. He's made it through 150 years of saving lives, building bridges, befriending humans, caring for his sisters. And now it's up to them. He prays, "Please, once more, grant me that blank ticket. Let me begin again." Meryl takes off her helmet, and when feathers touch down on her, she's transported to a plant's memory of being maintained, and another of a plant being visited by Vash. And it's terrifying to her. Unlike everyone else, Meryl has experienced this before, when Vash went out of control in Volume 5, and when contact with his feathers forced her to live through his memories of July. I think it's not just that memories and emotions are being shared, but people are living the plant's experiences. Meryl fights off the fear and tells herself she promised not to be frightened anymore. Vash is face down on the roof of the ship, but he sees Meryl approach and he thanks her because he can feel her fear and he knows how hard she's fighting to overcome it. He says these feathers are shards from the hearts of plants, all their memories, good and bad, mixing together and falling onto humanity. Meryl asks him what's going to happen next, and he admits he doesn't know. The response from humanity will determine everything. But he says whether it's good or bad doesn't matter. What matters is that you communicate, that you understand that the person next to you is breathing and existing. That's the answer. That's what Vash has been fighting for all this time. Deep within the heart of every person is just the desire to be known. To know and be known, and to understand and be understood. To see each other's humanity. In a 2007 interview with Comicers magazine, shortly after he finished Trigun serialization, Naito-sensei had this to say about the theme of his work. He said, "There's a conclusion I've come to while constantly confronting the story. In the end, I think people hurt and take lives because they don't know enough about each other. If they knew each other well, the weight would be different. If you were blatantly shown that people are living, wouldn't you be reluctant to press the nuclear missile launch button?" Vash ended up being portrayed as an existence that perceives from the perspective of a crawling existence. What he means by a crawling existence is that Vash is outside the bounds of time that a normal human is constricted by. Vash sees all of this pass in front of him from more of a bird's eye view. At least that's what I think he means. I don't know. I'm not him. He goes on, living long, interacting with people, feeling the existence of the other party with his skin, and just continuing his wandering. And in the end, I think that knowing, conveying, and connecting with each other for everyone is a power that restrains various forms of violence. The word family in Trigun contains that meaning. And in the end, the thing that pierces the heart the most when you understand others is pain, isn't it? That's what Vash was saying to Knives in Volume 7. His pain is eased when he can share it with others. And that sharing pain with others and showing them how you understand eases their pain. It's a fact of life that you are going to suffer. To live is to suffer, but you cannot just lay down and die about it. And you can't fix the world, but you can love. The featherfall hits the city in force. People react in shock and sorrow as they experience the plant's pain, the anguish of being overworked and used up, but there's joy there too. The joy of existence, the joy of being needed and providing and sharing life with their sisters and brothers. It's overwhelming. It's too much. People are falling to their knees, crying, losing their minds, wrapped with wonder. And then there's a quieting, a different emotion, different memories come through, not of pain or care, not anything to do with humans at all, but just love. The plant's love for their brother in red who loves them so much. The collective voice of the plants says, "You all know him too, that young man with the gentle smile." What would he do at a time like this? And before the connection fades, the plants leave humanity with one last request. Let there be love and peace in this world. They're going to live in coexistence with humanity, with all of the pain and the joy that that entails. And now that they better understand each other, there's a path forward. They've made their decision. Knives feels it. The last of his sisters leaves him, and his face is filled with such anguish as they slip away. And for once, he looks like the scared young man that he's always been. Naked and alone. The Ark crash lands outside the city. There's just piles and piles of plant bodies everywhere. But one plant technician gets right on it, and he runs a cable out to them. And he tells the first face that he sees that this cable is life support. The plant is crying and may not understand, so he takes a feather from her and puts it to his forehead and prays that his intent comes through. And it does. A part of the plant's body lifts away to expose a terminal, and he plugs her in. The plant mechanic reassures the girl that they're not going to let them die. He tells her, "You've given us so much. We're going to live together. No, please let us live together." And the plant smiles at him. A whole rescue operation has begun. Military and plant mechanics are running cables hither and yon, saving as many plants as they can get to. Vash sees it all happening from up on the ship, and he's about to jump out the open hatch, but he pauses, and he turns to Millie and Meryl, and he says, "I have never in my life made a promise like this before. But starting today, I would like to try. I'm going to come back. Wait for me." And then he jumps right down into the desert, right to Knives. Knives' disintegrated body restructures itself in knots of flame and dust and jutting ribs. His leg is disconnected from his body. His arm is gone. Half his face is on fire. He's tired. He says, "Hey, Vash, my head's just killing me. Let's put this to an end so we can both be free." When Rem locked Vash and Knives into their escape pod, she said one last thing to Vash. But he can't remember it. He couldn't hear her over the sounds of the catastrophe. Knives' hair blackens as he regenerates himself. He's wielded more power than any being in history. But even for him, creating life out of nothing comes at a great price. Vash flings the spent casings out of his revolver and reloads one last bullet. Knives creates a bladed bow staff, and they advance on each other, closing the gap between them. Knives barefoot, Vash in his roach stompers, both black-haired and beaten down. One last bullet, and one last blade. Just the two of them and the damage they have done to each other. Knives lunges. Vash knocks the staff out of the way with his gun. They're face to face, stripped of everything. They've probably never been more evenly matched. And when Knives locks eyes with his brother, his mirror, he begins to reflect. And I don't know if Knives has ever really internally reflected on himself and his actions like this on the page for us to read. He thinks, why am I still doing this? Everyone has abandoned me. I have nothing left. He has used up the last bits of his power to reassemble his body, and even then his body is not what it once was. Vash tells him it's done. You can stop. You can put an end to this, Knives. We can just stop. There's no reason to keep fighting. Knives does not give a voice to the doubts that he feels. He tells Vash, I refuse to yield. My past and my future will not allow it. Even if I am alone in this world, I will walk my own path with pride. And I thought, for a minute, that sounded like a very Vash thing to say. But it's not. Not really. Vash hasn't ever been about walking his own path. He walks a path that is greater than him. A path that is not for himself, but includes all of humanity, all of the plants. Despite Knives' proud words, he doubts. He starts to think, we got caught up in something so big, so far beyond us, but we can't go back to the way things were. We can't pretend this didn't happen. In the overhaul translation, he says, the slate can never be wiped clean. There's nowhere else for me to go. Kill me, Vash. He wants Vash to kill him because even though he wants that blank ticket, he thinks he doesn't deserve it. The polar opposite of Legato. But Knives is fighting the one person who is willing and able to grant him that blank ticket. Forget humanity, forget ideology, forget the past and the future. I think Vash would be overjoyed just to have his brother back. Vash knocks Knives' slashing blow away, and they both turn with each other. It's practically the same back-to-back rotation Vash pulled with Wolfwood in Volume 6, but this time it is an enemy to his back and not a friend. If Vash completes this rotation, Knives will impale him. So Vash plants his foot and reverses direction. Knives carries the motion through gracefully, like a dancer in flight, and misses. He turns his face right into Vash's waiting gun, and he surrenders to the death that surely awaits him. It wasn't Knives' power that corrupted him, but when he had all that power, he could use it as a shield, as a distraction. That power made it easy to never face anything within himself. And now that that power is lost, it's amazing how quickly Knives comes to these conclusions that maybe he knew the whole time and his power only blinded him to it. And now that he's powerless and stripped of delusion, he can face it. what he's always known, that he loves Vash, and Vash still loves him, despite everything. Vash never abandoned him. It was Knives who abandoned Vash. And it was his fault, his own grievous fault. Despite everything that separated them, they were brothers. They only had each other. He feels that press of the gun to his head, and he screws his eyes closed and admits, I was the one who broke away. Then he feels Vash lift the gun away, and his eyes open in utter shock. And he remembers. Or maybe Vash remembers. Or maybe both of them remember at the same time. Rem's last words. Said Vash, be sure not to leave Knives on his own. Vash lifts his gun to the sky and fires his last bullet, his last gate, at one final onslaught coming from Chronica in her wrecked ship. And there's real fear in Knives' eyes as the blast shatters everything around them, and Vash's gate swallows enough to keep them safe. And even as Vash sacrifices his own safety to keep his brother alive, Knives' blade spears him in the side. It's like when Vash stabbed Rem when she was just trying to help him. Knives impales his brother, whether he intended to at that moment or whether he didn't realize what Vash was doing and thought that he would just take a cheap shot at him. Just like when Vash stabbed Rem, Knives immediately knows he's done something wrong. He calls his brother's name. The wound does not even matter to Vash. He scoops Knives up like he doesn't weigh a thing. He says, hold on to me, Knives. We're gonna fly away. He grows wings and takes to the sky to save Knives, carrying them away from Chronica, away from Octovern, away from humanity, away from everything, running away together, just them. Like Vash wanted for them 8 months ago, before all of this began. Knives protests. Why? Why? Vash, you stupid idiot. Just let us die. The last slip of Vash's blonde hair fades to black, and one of his wings crumbles away with it, and they plummet. Vash has gone limp. Knives is calling his brother's name, but he's unresponsive, so Knives sprouts a wing of his own to keep them from falling, and now he's the one holding Vash and carrying them both to safety. They began their lives as a single cell, and they'll leave this world as two halves of a whole. Chronica tries to lock onto them. They're fading fast into the sky, but someone shoots out her cockpit before she can fire. Livio, that's Wolfwood's pistol that he's using, apologizes to Chronica for being so rude, but he asks her to give Vash and Knives and us a chance. Livio watches Vash and Knives disappear into the rising sun, and then he hears someone behind him saying, you've done pretty good, but you still have a long way to go, crybaby Livio. He turns around, but no one's there. We saw him, though. Whether he was really there or a fragment of Livio's tired mind, I can't say. But true to form, Livio just starts crying. He tells Nico and Eth, thank you. So much. And everyone, Meryl, Millie, Louita, Brad, Marlon, the nameless thousands in Octovern, everyone sees the twin-winged creature fly away. And now they can begin to pick up the pieces. Rem's last words to Vash, when she told him not to leave Knives on his own, she was trying to save them both. She knew that she was about to die. She knew that Knives was not well. And she knew that Vash was suicidal. She was trying to take care of them both with just that one sentence. When she said, don't leave Knives on his own, she's telling Vash, you are not allowed to die. You have to be there for Knives. It puts a whole different perspective on Vash begging Knives not to leave him after Knives cut off his arm. Because for Vash, if Knives leaves on his own, that means he failed Rem. It puts a new light on Vash's determination to live and survive even when he wants to die. In Trigun Ultimate Volume 2, he said he can't die until he sends Knives to hell. And in Volume 5, he tells Hopper that he wants to die, but he cannot until he sees to Knives. We've gone from send Knives to hell to see to him. I think see to him is a double entendre. It's a euphemism for killing him or stopping him. But to see to someone also just means to care for them, to love him, to be his brother's keeper. He ain't heavy. He's my brother. And if he is heavy, he's still my brother. 6 months pass. Wanted posters of Vash and Knives have gone up all over, but people are starting to think they're both dead. Troops from the Earth Federation are on the hunt for them, but it's not really gone over well with the people of No Man's Land, because they feel like the people from Earth, or Terrans as they call them, are overstepping, encroaching on their way of life here. Terran forces surround a solitary mission house, and a man waits inside at the window with a rifle. He turns to the other people in the house with him. His little boy, whose name is Carlito, and Vash, alive and well, dark-haired and so tired, but he seems to be in pretty good spirits. The man doesn't like these Earth people, the way they've marched in here and acted like they own the place, but help and resources have come in with them. And as Carlito less than helpfully points out, they have televisions now. But the dad, I'm just going to call him Carlo because I don't think he gets a proper name. He says, the Earth people saved us, so we gotta live together now. And he does mention, at least in the overhaul translation, that the Terrans are manipulating information. So I guess the papers are running with the story that Earth saved them. Seems to me like the Earth Federation did a lot more damage than good, but knowing Vash, he'd probably prefer to keep this version of the story running and leave himself and Knives out of it. The three of them crawl down to the cellar, where Vash is going to use a secret escape tunnel, and they say their goodbyes. Vash has been living with them for 6 months. Goodbye isn't easy. Vash asks Carlo, "Why did you help us? We must have looked so strange." The doctor tells him, "Well, you were dying, and I'm a doctor." Your friend was just so desperate. Friend. I don't know how you survived all that. You were pierced through the chest at an angle, and I didn't get the chance to ask your friend what happened. When he mentions Vash's friend, Carlito looks out the basement window at the narrow trunk of a young tree. Knives had come to them bearing a dying Vash in his arms. This flaming, naked man dropped out of the sky onto his knees to ask this father and son for help. He said, "You must save him. He's crucial for you." Knives used his brother's life as a bargaining chip to convince Carlo to save him. Dare I say, any doctor, any human, would attempt to save a dying man, regardless of how helpful he'll be for humanity. But Knives doesn't know that. Knives can't ask something of this man for nothing. Knives stayed outside while Vash was being treated. Carlito wandered out to see him, because he doesn't know enough to be afraid of Knives. He found Knives wrapped in a cloak, kneeling at the base of a small tree that's heavily laden with apples. And Carlito's never seen a tree before. With pure innocence and wonder, he says, "Wow, what is that?" And Knives says, "It's food. It's for you. It'll help you survive." And that's when Carlito recognizes that those are apples. He just never knew this is where they came from. Knives tells the boy, "Please take good care of it." And Carlito asks, "Where are you going? Have you told Vash that you're leaving?" And Knives says, "No. Let's just keep it our secret." Carlito runs inside to tell Vash. And Knives, beside the apple tree, shuts his eyes and lets it all go. He fades away. He used the last parts of himself to give this boy an apple tree, to thank him and his father, and to keep them fed. It's too late to atone for anything. But here's his blank ticket. An olive branch to humanity. An apology, a prayer, a new beginning. The wind takes up his cloak and carries it somewhere only God knows. I think, like Wolfwood, if Knives had just recognized sooner that he was loved, he wouldn't have felt like he had to die. And I was so right about Knives. Vash was never going to kill him. Knives was never going to make peace with humanity, but something would be made right before the end. And I think it's fitting that it's a child who comes to him. Knives was a child when it all went wrong. Tesla was a child who was hurt beyond belief. If anything is going to show Knives at the end of his life that there is good in this world, let it be a little child. Knives uses the last of his godlike power, for the first time, in a truly godlike way, to create. In the Bible, humanity began in a garden that God created specially for them. Though the Bible never says what the fruit was, tradition says the forbidden fruit that Adam and Eve ate was an apple. Knives is giving humanity not just food that is pleasing to look at and good to eat, but a new start, the knowledge of good and evil. And he's trusting them to care for this tree, just like he's trusting them to care for his baby brother. And I was so right about the way that Knives and Legato both went out. It's nice to be able to trust a story like that, where you can see something coming and you can trust the author to carry it through for you. Because Vash gives them the same opportunity. A gun to the head lifted away. Legato reacts with more violence against an unaffiliated party and dooms himself. Knives' response to Vash's mercy is different because Vash has loved him this whole time. And Knives reacts with a rejection of Vash. But he's rejected Vash 100 times, 1,000 times before, and Vash has never stopped loving him. And it's that love that is able to make things right. It's that love that tells Knives, just take the blank ticket. So, sorry, I had to take off the jacket. I'm sweating to death. Dr. Carlo sends Vash into his secret basement tunnel with the reassurance that Vash has done enough, and instructions to go live a quiet life in the middle of nowhere. Vash says okay. The father and son plan to surrender and play dumb, as long as they can, to give Vash time to escape. Vash crawls his way through the tunnel and emerges right up behind the Earth forces. He could disappear forever right now. But a soldier gets on the megaphone and says, "You have 5 minutes to hand over Vash and Knives before we come in with force." There's no response from the mission for a few seconds, and then the man decides, "Actually, we're just going in right now," and he starts a 5-second countdown. Carlo and Carlito run for cover, and then a strange-looking man in a red coat drops in from above to land on the head of the Earth Federation leader and cut off his countdown. Vash is no longer blonde, but the coat and spiky hair are unmistakable. His appearance causes such a ruckus that the family is completely forgotten, and he starts leading the Terrans on a wild chase, and he's telling himself, "This is a one-time thing. I'll get rid of this crowd, and then I'll live in peace and quiet for the rest of my life. I'll be a normal man. Nobody will ever know who I am. I'll be carefree and optimistic, and I'll live a healthy life." And he runs smack into a crowd of bounty hunters who were following the Earth troops in the hopes of getting to him first. Now Vash is completely forgotten as the two factions start to fight over who has the right to him and the reward money. Vash is tossed aside in the scuffle and lands face first in front of a pair of pristine white buttoned boots. Meryl and Millie are here, and Meryl gives him hell for making his big promise to return and never following up on it. He's embarrassed, but she's not really mad at him. I think she's just relieved that he's still alive. She tells him there's a whole lot of people waiting for him. Let's show him you're alive and well. Vash takes this to mean, let's fight our way out of here together, and he takes a back-to-back stance with the girls, ready to take on the crowd of soldiers and bounty hunters around him. But the girls look at him like he's crazy, and Vash realizes he's made a grave mistake. They hand over their business cards. New business cards. They're no longer in the insurance business. They are investigative reporters. The big thing on Millie's shoulder is not her stun gun. It's a TV camera. They really do intend to show the whole world that he's alive and well, and they're going to do it on live TV. Meryl gives an opening spiel that in this 24-hour broadcast will uncover the true man behind the legend, the real Vash the Stampede. She shoves a microphone in his face and asks, Vash, it's been 6 months since you were last seen. How do you feel? Vash has gone shriveled and stone-faced. He didn't ask for any of this. He was trying to leave the public eye for good. All he says is, no comment. And then he runs away, screaming, please leave me alone, as he's chased down by a horde of reporters and thugs and military. And the whole world does see the broadcast. We see the Bad Lads gang, the 2 men Vash got drunk with at the end of Volume 6, Granny and Lena, who are alive and well, and the man from the Little Arcadia arc. Livio's grown his hair out again, and he's back at the orphanage with Melanie and the kids. We see Chronica, the Nebraskas, Brad and Luita, and the people from home. I think even the family from the Volume 2 incident where they accidentally blew up those guys makes an appearance. And I have a hard time believing that every single one of these random side characters made it through the apocalypse, but you know what? I will take all the W's we can get, because God knows they're few and far between in Trigun. I'm just happy to see Lena again. I thought for sure she was dead. Vash is just screaming and running, and then he starts to laugh, and I mean really laugh. It starts as nervous, incredulous laughter, and then it turns into something real. Because, in a way, this is what he was made for. Isn't it? To be misunderstood by humans and wanted and pursued by them, and to love them despite it all. And to chase that horizon and that big blue sky. To run after that blank ticket. To say yes to this life. Chapter 0 began like this. Long ago, in a yet unseen time, in a faraway place, the same song of humanity still sang. And chapter 97 ends like this. Far in the future, in a place that has yet to be seen, the song of humanity we all know will continue to be sung. I have an instruction in my script right here that says wipe your MFing tears. Because I knew if I was going to cry at any point, it was going to be this moment. Oh, don't cry, King. Your eyeliner's going to smudge. I do wish we had just one more chapter. Just a little bit more time with Vash to see how he's really doing. And not just this silly business at the end. Like, I want some real introspection just to see how he's processing all of this, because all of this that happened in the last few volumes takes place in just a few days. Like, he's tortured by Legato for 8 months on the Ark. He has a couple of days of respite after Wolfwood rescues him. Then Wolfwood dies. There's maybe a day or two to regroup in October. Then he fights Knives. He's forced to kill Legato, fights Knives again, almost dies, loses Knives for good. A lot can happen in 6 months, but like, I think we're probably not doing good, if I'm being honest. And by we, I mean Vash. I just think there's a bit of a tonal dissonance at the end here. Like, I know Trigun started out kind of silly, and so the attempt is to take it back into that silly realm. But the thing is, in light of everything we just went through, it makes it seem almost callous of Meryl to be treating Vash like that. I mean, I guess you could read it as like she's creating an absurd situation that works as a distraction to get him out of the mess that he's in. But it still leaves a bit of a strange taste in my mouth. I don't mind returning to some levity, but I do think it swung a little bit too far. I thought at the end here that maybe Knives was going to merge into Vash. He would give up his life force so that Vash could live, and then maybe a bit of Knives would live on inside him. Because, like, we've seen that plants can do that. Knives was going to absorb Vash in Volume 7. So I thought that maybe he would just have Vash absorb him. And I still think that would be kind of a cool concept to play with, but I'm glad that it ends with Knives finally treating Vash as his own person and not like he belongs to him. Knives giving Vash away to humanity is him recognizing Vash's own autonomy. And the scene with the apple tree, I think, was just so perfect. It breaks my heart that he left without saying goodbye, but of course he would do that. No matter how badly I want them to just be able to be there for each other, and I wonder what life would look like if Knives were to attempt to just live. While it may not be the most satisfying to me personally, it's the thing that Knives would do, right? It's the most consistent with his character. There's just such an immense realness to the way that Vash and Knives are written. I could write essays and essays about this, just how complicated it is, how I see so much of myself and my siblings in them. Obviously, we're not trying to kill each other, but, you're seeing something magnified to the extreme. That's sort of just a reflection of the way that your reality is. The way that no one can hate you or love you more than your own siblings, and that the hate and the love don't cancel each other out, and more often than not, they exist at the same time, in the same hearts, between the same people. And I was so right about the way that Knives' ending would happen, and the way that Legato's ending would happen, and that it all comes down to the fact that Vash loved Knives, and that Knives would have a little bit of peace knowing that, and that Legato would die horribly because he has no one to love him. Even when Vash tries to show him that love and mercy, he can't accept it. I have so many songs for this volume. I'm putting out a link to my Trigun playlist, my magnum opus. It's about 5 hours long, and it's like semi-chronological according to the events of the manga, and I'm so proud of it. I could do a whole video just talking about each of these songs and why I chose them and what they mean to me. But the few that I chose for this volume, because I couldn't just do one, there's so much that happens. For the Vash and Legato situation, it's gotta be Hurricane by 30 Seconds to Mars. Sorry for the Jared Leto jump scare, but the song rips despite that. For Knives, if you've never listened to Apple Tree by Marika Hackman, open up a new tab, look it up, and listen to it immediately after finishing this video. I feel so damn cold. Hold me like a child, 'cause I feel so damn old. I got so damn old. For Vash and Knives, really it doesn't get any better than He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother. But I'm strong. I guess just more generally, God of Death by Susto. No Bravado by Foxy Shazam. The Messenger by Linkin Park. Love Keeps Us Kind. Life leaves us blind. Love keeps us And I end the playlist with Hymn for Hominin by Silicon Boone, a song for humanity, as it continues to be sung. I feel like I just have so much to say, and not enough time or energy to say it. I'm working on a secondary follow-up video to this, specifically about the tragic optimism thing, because there was so much I wanted to pack into this video, and it was going to be 4 hours long. I just had to create a whole separate video essay. I can't believe it's done. This story changed me in a way that few stories have. It was holding up a mirror to me, saying all these things that you believed, that you thought you were the only one who believed them. You're not insane for believing them. You're right, and let me show you how the willingness to suffer gives nonviolence power. How you have to hold in both hands the way the world is and the way it could be. How you will live and you will suffer, but it will matter. And you will still live and you will still suffer, but you will love. And the only way to live is to pour out your life and love in the service of others. You are going to love and lose. Rinse and repeat. It's the way of life. An unending cycle of enduring the craterous, tortuous hole in your soul and having that void filled by the love of other people and being the one to heal that void in someone else's soul. So thank you for watching. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. I finished reading Trimax shortly after my 26th birthday. And I know it's not really how Vash's aging works, but he was estimated to be 24 at the beginning of Trigun Ultimate, and there's a 2-year time skip until maximum, and so I'm ending this at the same age as Vash. And that feels so right to me. I spent 2 years reading something that I could have read in 2 days, which was a choice, but I wouldn't do it any differently. It required so much restraint and reflection and discipline to see this through to the end, and I learned so much. So I want to end this with something that a friend of mine wrote. She was the one who got me into Trigun, so I may be thanking all of you for watching, but you need to be thanking her, because she's the reason why I'm here. Here's what she said. Reading Trigun was like, it's okay to grieve and burn at the cruelty and overwhelming pain that you see and feel, and to know you're capable of immense evil, and it's normal to feel disgusted with your own capacity for evil, even if you're trying your best not to hurt others. And it's okay to grieve about how broken the world is, as long as you don't go to those dark places, either in your mind or wherever your path leads, alone. As long as your anger doesn't lead you to sin, as long as your despair does not pull others into despair. That your own capacity for good and peace can be shattered in a single weak moment, and that's just your nature, but it has to be fought against regardless, and you can't do it alone. Grief and struggle are not things to keep to yourself. They're nothing to be ashamed about. That embracing them will help others too. Trigun really said that joy isn't happiness and should never be confused as such. Joy is a bloody, dirt and glass shard covered thing. It's not just for yourself, but for others around you. If you have joy, maybe they can hold on to it too. Because sometimes hope just simply isn't enough. Sometimes things are hopeless. But joy makes a hopeless fight worth struggling over. Joy makes you abound in hope, patient in tribulation, lacking nothing. To quote N.D. Wilson in Notes from the Tilt-A-Whirl, tragedy must be destroyed by someone willing to be swallowed by it, willing to be broken, torn out of the flesh, but able to return to it. It's holding nothing back, willing to face the most horrific parts of your own self, the worst of the world, the things you are desperately scared of, the things you hate, to suffer long and hold nothing back, to live like you're meant to die, meant to be ragged, run until there's nothing left, until everything is burned away and even the bones don't remain. That is how life is supposed to be lived. Nothing held back, thrown into the darkness, biting and tearing and screaming into the sunlight. Love and peace.
When you feel you're alone, cut off from this cruel world, your instincts telling you to run. Listen to your